I had a belief that I will struggle, and that's just part of life. So in my early adulthood, if I wasn't struggling, I made sure I did something that made me struggle because that was the belief that I had. And so that was probably the biggest belief that I think I had to shift. Um, a lot of times, if we look back to the beliefs that we had, I mean, they're all created by usually somebody that has said something to us. It can be something very minor, and it can be a teacher, it can be a parent, it can be a friend, right? And so it's, when we're younger, very young kids, we don't have the ability to differentiate behind what's fact and what's fiction. As I was going on this personal development journey, I thought, these people are at this place in their life, but they're not changing. And so why are they not changing? That kind of really started, I think, me diving into the subconscious work and trying to understand, what does it take for people to change? Why don't people change? Why do people stay stuck? Why do they stay the same? Why do they stay in this space that's not serving? None of us are designed to be put on this earth to struggle. So that was probably the hardest belief I had to shift, because I think it was very ingrained. And also because I think I self-sabotaged a lot. Things were going well for me, I would self-sabotage and make things a struggle to align with that belief, right? And so that pattern just got reinforced, and everything I did would validate that belief. And so I had to really, a lot of it becomes habit, and so I had to really shift some of the things I was doing and realize, okay, I'm self-sabotaging here. I need to be stepping into some new things and realizing that I can do good. I don't need to struggle.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Brainwash to be Broke series. Today's guest is someone who is all about helping people break through the mental junk that's been holding them back. She's a former corporate employee turned entrepreneur with over 12 years of experience in behavioral awareness coaching, and she's known for helping people get their shit together in both life and business. Through powerful questions and mindset work, she helps her clients ditch the old programming, break through roadblocks, and create outcomes that actually align with their purpose and passion. Pumped to have her here. Welcome to the show, Melanie Shiell.
Thank you.
Thank you
Happy to be
so
here.
much. Hopefully, I pronounced your surname properly.
Yes, you did.
Perfect. Amazing. So, yeah, I'm super excited to have you here today, and I have prepared, lots of questions, and super excited to dive into some topics with you of, subconscious programming and all sorts of things like that. But before we go to those topics, I would love to, and for sure, listeners would love to know more about you. Where are you coming from, and like how did you get into entrepreneurship and helping others to, break this society programming, basically.
Yeah, for sure. So like a lot of people, I come from, that corporate background, did all the things I was supposed to do, go to school, go to university, get a degree, get a job actually in the legal profession. So come from a background in law enforcement, which is very different than what I do now. And kind of, really enjoyed the corporate life at the beginning. But then I felt really kind of limited in, my ability to kind of grow as a person. So actually got into entrepreneurship kind of by accident. Got into the network marketing industry. That's kind of where it started. Within that industry, there was a lot of personal development that was part of that industry. So really started tapping into personal development and growing as a person. And through that work, really saw kind of a version of myself that I was not operating from. So a version that was much more capable of, stepping into more purpose, adding to the world. I had a lot of gifts that I don't think I realized by working in corporate. So really just started tapping into personal development. Over the years, really dove deeper and deeper into personal development. Spent a lot of years in diving really into mindset work, into subconscious reprogramming, into belief patterns and things like that. And it was a tough few years because I had a lot of things, in my life that I had to work through, and realizing that I had a lot of beliefs that weren't serving me. And they were kind of really creating this narrative of how I was going to live my life. And so really started diving into the belief patterns that I had, the narratives that I had, and doing the deep dive work that was required to change those beliefs. And when you change your beliefs, your identity changes. And so when your identity changes, you step into a different version of kind of who you were, a more empowering version. I always say the authentic version of who I was supposed to be. So that's kind of what led me to here through my own journey. And now I help people transform through a very similar journey that I went through.
Very interesting story and background how you get into entrepreneurship. But you said accidental entrepreneur. Like how did that happen actually?
Yeah, so I had, a friend that was in the network marketing industry asked me if I wanted to, dabble in it. I didn't know. I surely wasn't experienced in sales, knew nothing about it. It was a company that sold skincare and health and wellness products. I'd always been, somewhat passionate about health and wellness and taking care of myself. So I think I was more interested kind of from a consumer standpoint, from a customer that, but then got around the community, which I really enjoyed. It was a community of people that I wasn't used to. It was a community of people that had, envisioned things for themselves. The vibration was very high. It was very, very different than, the Monday morning meetings that I would have at work. So it became very appealing to me. And so I didn't set out to be an entrepreneur by any means. But I think I did maybe subconsciously seek out community, right? Kind of a more of sense of community. And it kind of just landed me in that spot. And then that kind of just started my personal development journey that led me into being surrounded by a lot of entrepreneurs. And like you said, you are like the people you surround yourself. So ended up really embracing, the people I was around and ended up becoming an entrepreneur.
Okay, yeah, that's yeah for sure. Like the people who are around you, they're going to like this is it's going to shape you. Like they are going to shape you in some type of form, right? Because the environment is just a huge piece. Because if you are in the situation that you are just partying and you have people that are partying around you, you're going to be basically one of them, and you're gonna become you have the same priorities in life and all sorts of things. So this is a really huge piece.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
when let's go back into you mentioned also that you felt somehow like limited when you've been actually like in the corporate job, or maybe even before the corporate job in
Mhm.
school, or I don't know exactly what like how was for you, the childhood. Um, so like what do you mean by being limited? How that even happened that you started feeling that way?
Mhm. So I think, now looking back, I think I've always been a very, very creative person. I've been a very, in the work that I've done, I've realized that a couple of my main motivators are integrity, transparency, and accountability. That's what drives me. And so if I'm in an environment where that's not, it doesn't exist, I tap out because that's just not for me. So looking back now, knowing
Once
that
again, what was
those,
those two words? Integrity,
so integrity,
integrity.
transparency, and accountability.
Can you go deeper on those?
Yeah. So just environments that are very communication, right, is very heightened, very transparent. Environments where people are not afraid to take accountability, right, to be accountable, step up, speak up. Looking back, that was part of my persona, but I think to some degree it was squished down a little bit. And so what I found was as I just started doing my entrepreneurial journey and those parts of me started blossoming, it wasn't welcome in the workplace.
Hmm.
That idea of speaking up, that idea of going above and beyond was just not that it wasn't encouraged, but just a lot of people didn't do it.
Hmm.
It was one of those things where you go to work, you spend your time, and you come home. And so I started to feel that I wasn't really fitting in
Hmm.
because I always wanted to do more. I always wanted to be honest with people. I always wanted to, just push beyond what I was capable of. And I worked, in a government setting, and let's be honest, there's not a lot of accountability, transparency, and integrity in government, unfortunately. And so it was just a part of me that was blossoming that I just didn't feel that I could be me because it wasn't encouraged. It just wasn't normal practice, right? To go, like I said, to go above and beyond and to be honest with people, to communicate. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you what was your actually your the corporate job that you've been doing? I didn't.
Yeah, so I worked primarily in municipal law enforcement. I spent a lot of years too inside of the courtroom, so doing a lot of the administrative tasks to do with, court. So I got a really, eye-opening experience of our justice system, and how it's not the best at times. And so, I was able to surround myself with a lot of people that were at their lowest point.
Right, right.
And what I started realizing was nothing was changing.
Mm-hmm.
I for the amount of years that I was there, it would be it would be little Johnny coming into court, and then in the afternoon would be his father, and then the next day would be his grandfather, right? And I started seeing these cyclic kind of things, and nothing was changing. And then 6 months later, little Johnny was back in there. And so, I just, as I was going on this personal development journey, I thought, these people are at this place in their life, but they're not changing.
Mm-hmm.
And so why are they not changing? And that kind of really started, I think, me diving into the subconscious work and trying to understand, what does it take for people to change? Why don't people change? Why do people stay stuck? Why do they stay the same? Why do they stay in this space that's not serving them?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I realized, I think that, as I went through my journey and was shifting through all these things and changing and evolving as a person, I realized there's a whole lot of people that could really use my help, right? And can really learn from the journey that I was on. And like I said, I got to see people in their, the lowest point of their lives. And they're really, I was in this role of, administratively in the justice system, but also in law enforcement. I wasn't helping them by any means. I was day in, day out doing my job. And so I just wanted to really empower people, and I wanted to make a difference. I think I went into the industry, the legal industry, wanting to make a difference. And I couldn't.
Right.
So by stepping into that entrepreneurial role, I think I can make more of a difference in people's lives.
So before that, you've been employed, and that entrepreneurship shift happened. What have you been actually studying in, like, what
Yeah.
school?
Yep. So sociology and legal studies. So it was kind of actually in line with, I guess, what I'm doing now. More so in the legal field, but sociology. So how people interact in their surroundings, right? How their environment shapes and impacts who they are. So I guess, looking back, it's kind of a full circle
Mm-hmm.
that I've made, right? I've kind of went into, I had that legal studies background because that was an interest of mine.
It was your
But
passion,
now
yeah.
I've been,
Was it your
yeah.
passion to actually go that way? Like, when you've been, raised by your parents, right?
Mhm.
Have you had this type of, you know, um, feeling or your passion about those type of things that that you start studying about it right from
Yeah.
in that, yeah, childhood, or not
Yeah.
childhood, but yeah, childhood, can I say?
Yeah, exactly. I was always, I was always one, even as a little girl, to analyze people, to watch people,
Very interesting.
to pay attention. I've always been very aware,
Mm-hmm.
notice things that a lot of other people don't. And I think, me going into the legal field, and particularly in law enforcement, that just strengthened that.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me to keep safe, I had to be very aware.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and that's why I do behavioral awareness coaching, because a lot of times people go on this journey to try to change themselves, but the first step of it really is being aware of
Mm-hmm.
where you are right now, and you can't change what you don't acknowledge.
Yeah.
And so that kind of led me down this path of behavioral awareness.
Yeah. And if you grew up in a you know, just basically corporate working family, like they've been working corporate job, or right?
Yeah, so my mom was a teacher. She's retired now. My father actually was a businessman.
Mm-hmm.
So he was an entrepreneur, but
Mm-hmm.
um, he had a family business that he ran, so it was kind of passed down from generations. So I was never, I wouldn't say, born into a family where creation, entrepreneurial in the sense of creating something new, wasn't part of it. Business was definitely part of it. But I think there's a distinction between business and entrepreneurship, right? I think it's very different.
Mm-hmm.
Entrepreneurship to me is very creative.
Mm-hmm.
You're creating something that doesn't necessarily exist, or you're taking something that does exist and shaping it, making it better.
And business, what would you say about business?
Yeah. So business, I mean, business is still business. There's entrepreneurs that operate business, but I think some businesses are still borderline on that corporate, right? Like there's that idea of, trading time for money, for instance, right? You're a businessman. And if you're not there, the business isn't running. And so there's a slight, it's a slight variation from corporate, but it's similar.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas I think entrepreneurship, we learn a lot of those, how to get away from that trading time for money.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the biggest,
Yeah.
basically piece that most people actually missing completely, because they think that your times equal money, right?
Mhm.
And when you can jump into entrepreneurship, you have to. The whole point of being entrepreneur is basically that um, we want to disconnect time from making money, because we want to live the life which is the um, limited resource we have,
Mhm.
everybody.
Yeah.
um, we want to disconnect we want to disconnect the money from there, because then we can make in like exponentially more if we do
Mhm.
that, and we can provide, for example, value for others and solve problems there, big problems,
Mhm.
and so on, right? But when when you've been, in a school or so, like you've been planning your life going to be basically working in corporate, the corporate ladder, and that was your goal of like how you been raised by your
Mhm.
parents, right?
Mhm.
Okay. And have you been like what when was it? So you basically been raised, but you just been going to school. Then after that, when you start being employed, you start seeing that there is some difference, probably, right? That was, yeah.
Mhm.
And then so how did you like what actually, because we are now talking about the reprogramming mind, like the mindset and everything, because have you been seeing right from the beginning that something is not working the way it's supposed to be? Because like the lives that we are like the script that we are handed right from the young age is pretty much to keep us like easy to control, just do
Mhm.
what we taught you, be a good worker, not an
Mhm.
entrepreneur, and this type of thing. So how, like, what that was there a different thinking of yours from the young age that I have to like there is something not working properly, or how did you like everything like fits together when you've been older and older?
Mhm. I think for me, it was, to be honest, it was the environment that I started hanging around because, I would go to work and I would work a day and I would come home and I would, you know, make supper and go to bed and then repeat it all over again the next day. And that was fine until I started hanging around other people that weren't tied to a job Monday to Friday.
Right.
They were working hard for sure, but they dictated when they worked.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot more time freedom, and as far as kind of income went, there was no ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was no cap on it. And so it got me, it was just an awareness.
How was that for you when you saw like there are people who are making way more of money than you can ever make, for example, in a year, in a normal job? Like
Yeah.
what was the realization for you actually?
Yeah. So it was a realization that, why can't I do that?
Mm,
Right. Like for years, I always thought, and I think I was raised in an environment, and I think society, that education, formal education, is directly tied to income.
mm-hmm,
And so I remember being in corporate and thinking, I just want to make the Sunshine Club. I just want to make 100,000 a year. Right. That's my goal. And then I started meeting people that were making that in a month. And so it started shifting my perspective. And some of these people were not formally educated,
mm,
by any means. And so it started shifting my belief around, okay, well, maybe education doesn't have anything to do with income. And so I think it was a belief that I had that really started to shift for me. And then started realizing, okay, well, if these people aren't formally educated and making this kind of money, me who is formally educated, what could I possibly make? Right. But then also realizing, looking back, that, formal education will make you a living, but self-directed education will make you a life.
wow.
Right. And that's where I started realizing, when I started diving into these things and diving into, and being around these kinds of people that were really committed to self-directed learning
Mm-hmm,
and seeing the potential that they had, and not just income, because I mean, I'm not money motivated by any means, but money in the sense that it gave them choice
mm,
and it allowed them to impact other people in a very, very significant way,
mm-hmm.
which was something that I wanted to do. And so I think it was just a belief that I had that I didn't realize I had, that once I started growing, became aware and really just started shifting. So a lot of it, I would have to say, was the environment that I was around, that I started surrounding myself with.
Yeah, so when you've been talking about beliefs and this type
Mhm.
of things, like what was the biggest shift for you actually, like when you had to make to actually like s- start believing, for example, in yourself more? I don't really like I don't know what exactly like stop you to actually go into entrepreneurship, but from your perspective, what was the belief that you had to
Yeah.
overcome in your situation?
Yeah. So it was the belief in the idea that, like I said, formal education equals income. It was the belief that working hard and long hours equals high income.
Mhm,
It was the belief that, just do what you're told
mhm,
and you will excel. It was the belief that you trade time for money. That was normal. You go to work, you trade your time, and you get an income in return. That was the belief I had. That's how I thought things worked.
mhm,
But as I grew and as I evolved, I realized that, okay, there's people making a lot more money than I was, working not as hard. They're working smart, right? It was two different things. So it just started shifting that belief for me. And the idea that, these people weren't formally educated that were making a lot of money. So that was kind of okay. The belief that I had of formal education equals income was not, well, that was, blown out the window. That didn't exist. So it's just, I think the people that I was surrounding myself around were really proving my beliefs to be not true, right? Because they were kind of,
How you
against everything I was
how did you
thinking.
decide with like what type of people you want to be surrounded?
Yeah, so those kind of people just they had a higher vibration, positive all the time, just very, very different. And the way I felt about myself and the way I felt, about life, the way the visions and the potential that I saw, it was just hard not to not be around it and like to be around it. And so I
What
think when I got,
and what type of people?
oh,
Like
so entrepreneurs, yeah,
yeah,
entrepreneurs, yeah.
entrepreneurs, and how did you decide that that person is actually like you want to be around that person? What was the like the decision making thing for you to be around that type of person? And because
Yeah,
how they can actually, how normal people can actually go and decide who is a good person to actually be around, like surround.
yeah.
You
I think it was noticing that my behavior shifted,
know?
my emotions, my feelings shifted when I was around those people,
Hmm.
right? I felt, limitless. I felt that I could do anything. I felt empowered. And then, when I was at work, I didn't feel that way.
Hmm.
And so I prefer definitely feeling empowered and positive and like I mattered and like I could make an impact. And so that's the crowd that I chose.
Okay, yeah, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
yeah, that's super. Yeah, because for me, I've been always like, what? Okay, so what is my goal? How I want to like what I want to achieve, and I've been looking for people who are really close, or they did already what I'm trying to do, and the way that I wanted to go. So it was like surrounding around those people because I know that they already done it. So I
Mhm.
probably, if I'm going to model them, I'm probably go and be around those people, I'm going to probably get the same outcome, right? So that was for me like, okay, this is the way that I'm going to like who I'm going to spend the most time with. And
Yeah.
has like where would and so where did you go to actually find those people?
Yeah. So, I mean, it started just like I said when I got into the network marketing industry. So it was that community of people in the same company with that opportunity. I would go to yearly conventions where I would meet more people that were like that. And then, to be honest, I found a lot of those people just online. I really started embracing social media. I started embracing the internet and found tons of people like that online. So some of the bestest friends that I have, some of the people that I have really great relationships, I've never met in person, right? And I've got other people that I've been around my whole life. And some of these people on social media, some of these people I've met maybe yearly at a convention, I think have been more instrumental in me transforming and growing as a person.
Yeah, yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And super important in business growth and even starting anything because the shift has to happen. Like you can spend time with people who aren't um, who aren't wired to do more because if
Mhm.
yeah, and that's a big piece. But also I wanted to ask you about like when we've been talking about money, why do you think people or like this schools and everybody like in that environment, why they're not talking about money?
Mhm. I think a lot of it is a lack of awareness, and I don't want to say a lack of education, but a lack of understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, when I got into the network marketing industry, and there's a few different companies that I was with, one of the companies was a leadership, personal development company, and we talked a lot about money in that company. And that's where I really learned about the financial matrix,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Which I had never heard of before. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know there was such a thing. I don't even think I knew anything about fiat money and gold standard and what that all meant. I'd never heard of that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think for a lot of people, they just don't know. They haven't been, um, it hasn't been brought to their attention what it is. They haven't been brought to their attention how money has evolved. It hasn't been brought to their attention, money. And a lot of people don't realize that we all have a money story. So is what is that money story that we have? And that's how we will live and how we will make money. If we are brought into a home where it's given the impression that money is scarce, right? And that's the belief that we've got, that money is scarce, then, down the road as adults, we will self-sabotage having money because our belief is that money is scarce.
Yeah.
So it's a combination, I think, of just not knowing, not understanding. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So totally, like there is a. Do you think that it's intentional that the way that like the society, government, and also like the schools are designed that way to actually like, I would say even like keep, or yeah, like keep people at that level and made them uninformed, and like to keep them easy to control, or
Yep, 100%. Yeah, it's all intentional, 100%. I do believe that. Because, if you have a world full of entrepreneurs,
Mhm,
right? We all know that there's probably not a lot of money necessarily, going to the government and circulating and all those things. So it's one of those things where, and we can go down a rabbit hole on this, but I do think, I mean, the government's intention is to have it so that the people are reliant on the government,
mhm.
right? For income. And so when you have entrepreneurs that's not needed, that's not the case, then that kind of sabotages that plan, right? And so, of course, not teaching people about money, not teaching people about entrepreneurship, about writing off money, when you have a business, about different kinds of money, cryptocurrency, investments, gold, silver, all those things. By not educating and not informing people about that, those are the things where people are not going to need to be dependent on the government, right? And so that kind of sabotages that plan. So of course, there's probably some intentionality with not teaching those kinds of things.
What are your thoughts about like where money and all the concept is heading? Like because now with those, cryptocurrencies and all sorts of things, like we probably we all going to agree on that, it's already like it's pretty known that there is like money is just out there because of our beliefs that we believe in money, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are nothing that actually backing up the money, right? That's already like
Yeah,
it's quite a it's I would say it's for quite a bit already here,
yeah, yeah,
right? So what are your thoughts like? What do you think that where this
yeah,
whole money concept is going towards into the future, like because now we can see more and more different type of currencies are coming in, and but they also go right, but
yeah,
yeah, anyway, like I would love to know like or hear
yeah.
your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think we're making a shift from inflationary money to deflationary money,
Mm,
right? Because, and I think when I learned about the gold standard and understood that, okay, money used to be backed by gold,
mhm,
and when they got rid of that, and fiat money now, when I really got diving into thinking about it, it's literally printed out of thin air, right? When you really understand it. And so I got thinking, like, how long can a society sustain that? Like, you can't just keep printing money and loaning money, and when we're in a debt society, it's just the way it is. And so you can't sustain it forever like that. And so there's a lot of talk, if you're listening to entrepreneurs and educating yourself, about um, these deflationary assets and things like this, um, like the cryptocurrencies and the digital income, gold and silver, particularly silver, because I think it's increasing in value quite quickly. But I think, without going down a rabbit hole, we are going to make a shift to more of a digital type currency, and people that have really looked into that, people that have got gold and silver. I think I was hearing the other day with Bitcoin, like 5% of the world's Bitcoin is left. But when you look at what percentage of people have it, right? And so it's like you said, it's looking at what people have that we want. And
mhm.
the people that have what I want don't have loads of, well, they do have loads of fiat currency, but they also have a lot of digital currency and a lot of gold and silver, right? And they're learning those things. So my thought goes to, okay, if these people have what I want, this is what they're doing. So that's what I'm going to do.
Right,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And when it comes to like of the whole purpose of money, what is your take on that? Like why we are having money, what is the purpose behind it, and how people should actually operate with money?
Yeah. And it's interesting you ask that, because my view of money has very much shifted over the years. So when I was raised and when I was young, to me, money meant value.
Hmm.
So the more money somebody had, the more value they had in society, and the more worthy they were of people. Right? That was the impression I had. So if you've got lots of money and you've got nice things, then you're a better person. You add more value. You're more worthy. Right? That was the belief that I always had. So I had a desire to make a lot of money because I wanted to be a valuable person. But then when I really started diving into what money is energy. That's really all it is it's energy. We as a society have put so much emphasis on this little piece of paper that has a number on it that says it's worth something, right? And so my views of money have really shifted over the years that, money is energy. Money is a tool to exchange for value in the sense that, I offer a good or a service to somebody and help them, and they give me energy, money in return. So it's very much shifted, and it's not a measurement of a person's worth,
Mhm.
because I know lots of people that maybe don't have a lot of money per se or a lot of income per se, but they have a lot more impact.
Mhm.
So for me, it's shifted, I think, from total income equals worth to impact over net income. Right. To me, the impact is more, but knowing that, yeah, you can make more impact with more money, but it's just the view of the importance of money that I think has shifted.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you said impact. Like, what does it really means to you? Like, like an impact. Like helping or securing your future, like your kids, or
Mhm.
tell me more about that.
Yeah. So impact for me is really, it's a lot of different things, but it's leaving people better than when you met them. It's doing the work that I do and helping them really see their authentic version of themselves because, the majority of people have beliefs, have narratives, are programmed a certain way, and it's not even close to who they authentically are. So impact means doing that work. Impact means stopping generational cycles. So
Mhm.
it means, a lot of people have trauma work that they have to do, and a lot of that trauma work is cyclic, it's generational. And
Mhm.
so for me, impact is stopping that generational trauma. To me, it's helping other people stop that generational trauma, because when you stop the generational trauma with one person, you impact generations beyond that. Right. And so that's a big part of impact for me. Impact for me is leaving a legacy for my kids, right? Leaving an example for them of what it takes to be, somebody of value in the world that makes a difference.
Yeah, super powerful. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love this because it's just um you know this is exactly is the same stuff for me, right? And this is the whole point of doing this, and being the entrepreneur, being able to help others, help help, like, be able to provide for my family, that they don't need to do the same or go through the same stuff that I went
Mhm.
when I was kid, for example, or so
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
right? um so now, when you actually went from corporate job and also all of that, and then you start shifting into entrepreneurship, like, what were those beliefs that you have to completely overcome, and like what was the hardest things for you to actually like completely change,
Um,
that how you've been like, or rewire yourself to being able to be successful, and being on the path of entrepreneurship.
yeah. Yeah. I think, it really starts with, like I said, being aware of those beliefs, because if we don't know what they are, we can't change them. For me, it was really changing. I had a belief, because I did struggle as a child, and I had a belief that I will struggle, and that's just part of life. So in my early adulthood, if I wasn't struggling, I made sure I did something that made me struggle, because that was the belief that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was probably the biggest belief that I think I had to shift.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of times, if we look back to the beliefs that we had, I mean, they're all created by usually somebody that has said something to us. It can be something very minor, and it can be a teacher, it can be a parent, it can be a friend, right? And so it's, when we're younger, very young kids, we don't have the ability to differentiate behind what's fact and what's fiction. And so what we hear, we internalize.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you're brought up in a home that's, not the best environment, there's some domestic stuff going on, then you're kind of always on that high alert, and you're always, you have a belief as a child that things are like this, things are a struggle, things are difficult, right? Because that's just kind of the belief you have. And so when you get into adulthood, like I said, that's the belief you have. And so struggling was a belief I had that was normal, that that's just part of life. I meant to struggle. I meant to struggle financially. I meant to struggle, with relationships. And then, so I think that was probably the hardest belief I had to shift. That no, I'm not meant to struggle. Life should be easy, and that's the way it's supposed to be. None of us are designed to be put on this earth to struggle. So that was probably the hardest belief I had to shift, because I think it was very ingrained.
Mm-hmm.
And also because I think I self-sabotaged a lot. Things were going well for me, I would self-sabotage and make things a struggle to
Mm-hmm.
align with that belief,
Yeah.
right? And so that pattern just got reinforced, and everything I did would validate that belief. And so I had to really, a lot of it becomes habit. And so I had to really shift some of the things I was doing and realize, okay, I'm self-sabotaging here. I need to be stepping into some new things and realizing that I can do, I can do good. I don't need to struggle.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Was there an event that happened, like, the breaking point event for you, like when you realized that I can't do this anymore and I have to shift to entrepreneurship? And if yes, like what was it? Like was there, like, I don't
Mhm.
know, for example, for me it's like to be able to be in front, like with my parents, my kids, for example, because I'm not having them yet, but in the
Yeah.
future I want to
Yeah.
be, like, I want to be present with them
Yeah.
all the time and want to give
Yeah.
them the best, right? So was there something like that, like some event for you that actually um made you to do the decision to go to entrepreneurship?
Yeah. I don't know if there was one event. Like I would have to say there was called maybe multiple events that kind of reinforced it. But I've got two, well, they're not really boys anymore, they're young men, they're 18 and 20, but two kids. And I think seeing them struggle sometimes very early on, and them kind of going about it like it was normal, right? And I was like, maybe I've taught them this, that it's normal to struggle and that's just part of life, and I would always say it is what it is. But now I'm like, no, it's not what it is. You change it.
Yeah.
Right. And so now just seeing them shift and how they deal with, challenges, and they're more resilient. And so, yeah, I mean, a lot of it, I think, is watching how my kids were maybe behaving and realizing, oh, I've passed this on a little bit. But also seeing the same patterns in my life, the same struggles, right? The same relationship struggles, the same financial struggles over and over and over again. So realizing, like, sooner or later, it's like, okay, this keeps happening, like we need to do something different here, right? So I think it was just, wasn't really one event, but it was just a reinforcement of the same patterns over and over. And then a little bit of, watching my kids maybe, deal with struggle and deal with things in a way that I was like, this isn't my intention of teaching them like this, right? So it's just a combination of things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so what actually, like, did you know exactly that you're going to, like, from the beginning, that you're going to, help people with this type of topic, and help them to actually, solve this, like, this issue? Or did you have to learn certain skills that actually, like, help you to figure out the entrepreneurship game? Because once you actually jumping into entrepreneurship, it's completely different game than actually being,
Mhm.
like, employed and so on, right? So what actually you had to figure out to make this successful, and that would help other, like, listeners to actually find the right path to
Yeah.
actually go and focus on.
Yeah. I think the one thing that I had to learn that really shifted for me was being okay with being uncertain.
Hmm.
And so what I mean by that is when I was in corporate world, everything was pretty much, figured out ahead of time. You knew what you were doing. There wasn't a lot of surprises. You went to work and you got a paycheck. I mean, it wasn't, that kind of thing. And so when you go into entrepreneurship, and a lot of the clients I work with now, that's one of the main things is they struggle going into it, or they hesitate staying in it, because they're not certain, right, that it's going to work. And if you go into the brain science, right, our brain doesn't like being uncertain, so it creates narratives to make sure we're certain of things. And so that was a big shift for me too, is just being okay with not knowing,
Hmm.
right? Being okay of not knowing what the end result was going to be, but just be willing to take that one step in front of the other. That idea, walk a mile, see a mile. And so I think that's, for a lot of entrepreneurs, that's what holds them back, is there's that uncertainty. There's no guarantees that you're going to make it, in the entrepreneurial world. When you go to work, there's a guarantee. You spend your time, you're going to get paid. In entrepreneurship, that's not how it works. But it's being willing to, it's a long game, and being willing to play the game long term and be consistent. I don't know if you ever heard the story of One Step from Gold, where that guy was digging for gold and he stopped, right? And he was 1 foot, right, from the gold. So that's what it is. It's just keep going and don't stop. If you don't quit, and you be willing to pivot when you need to, and you be coachable and willing to get mentorship when you need it, then you'll make it.
Yeah, yeah. And I would say, and add to this, that and I would love to hear your thoughts on that also, that like, entrepreneurship is mindset game, right? Like 90% mindset, then they have
Mhm.
10% of tool sets. So what you can see most people are struggling with in that mindset part of like making the whole piece, work. Um, yeah, that would be, yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Like mindset is 90% of it. A lot of the people I deal with, it is the beliefs,
Mhm.
is what it is. So they've got deep-seated beliefs. A lot of them aren't aware of what those beliefs are. Understanding that everything you do will validate those beliefs. That's how it works. So, if you're like me and you believe you're going to struggle, then you're going to do things that are going to shape you into struggling. If you have a belief around money that money is evil, money is not not a good thing, then you are going to self-sabotage and not make money because money's evil. So for a lot of them, it's just diving into the beliefs. I have one client that I was working with, and she has a lot of struggles around the self-talk, right, and the things. And so I had her create a card, and one side of the card says crap, and the other side says fact. So when she's thinking these things, is it a crap statement or is it a fact statement? And 90% of the thoughts are crap, right? They're basically, narratives, stories we've repeated that other people have said. They're not true. They're based on beliefs. And so it's really shaping, shifting those beliefs, creating new beliefs and creating new identities. So, within the mindset work, a lot of it has to do with beliefs. And that kind of that just creates kind of a fall of everything else. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So mindset is, yeah, and I can see also like people that because I my opinion is that you have to take massive ownership of on everything what you do if you want to be successful in business, because like this is the number one rule, I would say, because people who are struggling, they are unable to take ownership on their actions. And
Mhm.
people are really successful and intentional about what they do, and like that everything is happening for them, not to them. Like this is a massive piece that actually, like, I see lots of people are struggling with. um what would you how would you break the belief, or like how would you get them into this type of revire, like how would you revire them to actually take the ownership forever, like to the life they are living and everything about that? Is,
Mhm.
how would you like, what would you say to them to actually like?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, it's like you said, there's a big piece that people don't understand. We can't control other people, but we can control how we respond. And so it's really embracing that. It's really helping them, know their worth, know their purpose, know their strengths, tapping into that, but also realizing that, yeah, we've all got trauma. Yeah, we've all got things that have happened to us, but that doesn't have to impact us for the rest of our life, right? You are not your past. And unfortunately, some people will say to me, well, I've had this happen to me and this happened to me. And I say, well, yeah, and so and so had the same thing happen and they're killing it. So what's the difference? Right. And the difference is, like you said, is it's owning your shit. It's taking accountability for, yes, this happened to me, but it doesn't have to dictate who I am for the rest of my life. Right. It's not, the past is a great place of reference, but you don't have to set your house up there and live there, right? And so it's really helping people understand that living in the present moment more. I think, I always tell my clients, when you're depressed and sad, you're living from a place of the past, and when you're anxious and you're worried, you're living in a place of the future, and both of those places don't exist. Right. And so very few people live in the present. And so with a lot of my clients, that's where the shift happens, is just bringing them back to the present, right? Not worrying about what was said to you as a kid or this or that, not worrying about what might or might not happen down the road, but where are we now? What do we need to do now?
Yeah, yeah, that's so powerful. Is
Yeah.
there any other beliefs, like biggest shift that you would mention that actually you can see people, like like lots of people are struggling with, that would actually really um you know talk to lots of people, like, do you have any?
Yeah, like, yeah, imposter syndrome is a big one, right? So
Mhm.
this idea that I'm not qualified enough to teach something or to help somebody. And I think that comes from, this credential society that we have, that if you've got all these letters behind your name, you're qualified, right? So I do see a lot of clients that don't feel qualified because maybe they're trying to help somebody and they just don't quite feel like they know enough. And so they get into this trap of learning, right? The professional student of learning and learning and learning and never implementing. But what I tell people is if, most of the clients I work with teach things they've had success in. So if you've navigated that difficulty in your life, then you're fully qualified. Right. So that's probably another thing that I see is that imposter syndrome and just helping people work through that.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah,
Um,
no problem.
I think we're going to just wrap up here.
Yeah.
I have okay. I have one more question to close this interview with, and that is, if this was the last interview you would ever give, what's the message you would want to leave behind you?
So I think the message I would leave would be, just encouraging people to do the work,
Mm.
right? Do the work that needs to be done because when you dive deep and you do the work that needs to be done, your life changes forever. And like I said, you change generations after you. And so, it's not easy to do the work. It's not easy to face the Goliath in your life, but it's totally worth it. And so I think I would just leave people with, a message of encouragement to just do the work.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here. It
Yeah, no
was a
problem.
pleasure to have you, and so much stuff was said, and so much gold was dropped. Where people can find you, follow you, support you, or start working with you.
Yeah, so I'm on social media. You can pretty much find me anywhere under my name. I've got an amazing Facebook community as well for women specifically who overthink and self-doubt and struggle with imposter syndrome. So that's a group called Beyond Brave. So that's on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. Yeah, just under my name, Melanie Shiell.
Amazing.
So
Amazing. Thank you so much.
yeah, no
Thank you for
problem.
sharing that. And for everyone who's listening, if this stirs something in you, don't ignore it. Share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe, leave a comment, and remember, you weren't born to follow the script. You were born to be free. Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Bye bye.